Local stories, local people. We're taking you inside Western Mass News. It's the Even Better Western Mass podcast with Dave Madsen.
Hi, I'm Dave Madsen, and I want to welcome you to the first Even Better Western Mass podcast. Now, this podcast is something that we plan to do each week here from Western Mass News. We'll talk with newsmakers and just people in our community who are making a difference each and every day. And I want your opinions on this, too. What do you think of the podcast? Do you have any suggestions for any guests we could have week after week? We'll get to more on that later on. But my first guests this week are four people you know very, very well. The team of meteorologists from Western Mass News. Toughest job around, I think. I sat down with them just before Christmas to talk about their prospects for the winter and the business of forecasting the weather. Well, I'm here with the Fab Four.
Yeah.
What a title.
What was that, for the annual weather predictions, of course, this is the thing that meteorologists hate the worst. Is that a fair assessment?
Hate the worst.
Yeah.
Long-range forecasting,
I would agree with that.
I would agree with that, absolutely.
This is like the biggest farce of our job, I think.
But it's one of the most asked questions, right? What's the winter going to be?
It's what people want to know. They want to know what is the winter going to be like.
Well, they want to know now so they can blame you afterwards.
Right.
Pretty much.
Right? Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's not an exact science by any means.
God, just predicting the weather tomorrow is not an exact science. For the entire winter, that's pretty rough. But we try.
Is this the first time I think we've had the four of you together to do anything like this? You've done promos and stuff, but...
Yeah.
Probably just promos, I think. Right?
I think so.
Yeah.
First podcast for me.
Same here.
Yeah, same here.
Thanks for having us on.
Second for me.
So we're all fairly new at this.
Yeah.
This is wonderfully
Dave's actually a veteran now.
Yeah.
Second. So.
And this is a podcast, so we can say we're all podcast virgins and go from there. But,
That's one way to put it.
Jacob, I think we got to say, I'm amazed that you still have the beard.
Yeah. I'm going on 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
getting
surprised.
longer.
Yeah, I've got to clean
It's
it
getting
up a little
grayer,
bit.
too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I see the
Yeah.
See, the whole thing with that, too, it's allowing me to keep mine. Now, he could grow his in 2 days, and it took me 4 months to get where I am. But the other part of it is you have to, there's a little gray in there.
There's a lot of gray.
I'm a little closer.
Yeah, you can see it. Yeah.
Oh, just wait.
He's the youngest one in the room, so it kind of makes us all feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
You're catching up.
Makes me feel like crap, but here I am. So, anyhow, it's this is my next life after being on the air with all you guys, and I do say I miss all of you a lot.
Oh, yeah, we miss you.
We miss you, too.
And the last couple of years, I didn't get to see you much anyway because you would work nights, and of course our shifts never cross paths. So it was like
shifts in the night.
Yeah.
Holidays.
I was telling the story today. Dan will love this story. That many, many years ago, we had an anchor who just didn't show up one morning for work. At about 5 o'clock, I got a call from the station saying, "You need to come in and do the news." And I had gotten off and I had gotten home at midnight, so I just basically threw the clothes on and I walk in and I get here about 5 after 5, and there's Dan doing the news.
That's what I read the A block. I read the news. I've never been so happy to see Dave in my entire life.
Now, I've heard a rumor that air check has disappeared.
That air check no longer exists.
Yes. Did you press the delete button on it?
It's gone. No, you know what? I actually went back and looked at it like the next day, and it wasn't as bad as I thought.
You did good.
It wasn't too
Under
bad.
pressure, you hadn't read anything?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, it was like, what do you mean so-and-so's not here? What are you talking about?
What's worse, reading the news or doing a traffic report?
Oh, wow.
Nah, you got to go reading the news.
Traffic, only because it happens still currently.
The traffic, is a little, it's easier. But I was so happy to see it. Dave, I was like, oh my gosh.
Rumor is you have a copy of it, though.
What happened was I did the A block, and then the B block was weather, and Dave showed up by the C block. But I remember doing the weather thinking, wow, where do we go from here?
How do you talk to yourself?
Well, now.
I was just so stressed over the weather. And then I saw Dave, and I was like, oh, you.
I must say, it's the first time in my adult life that I think anybody's been happy to see me. So that works out well.
That's for sure.
A lot of weather experience here. The thing is with this podcast, it's going to be all over the country. Okay. So let's start from here and go on down and a little bit about yourselves.
So, Jacob Wycoff, I graduated from Western Connecticut State University in December 2008. I've been a meteorologist now for 11 years, here at Western Mass News for 4 years, almost exactly. So I've been a proud member of the team and still learning New England forecasting. I don't know if you can ever
I don't think that is.
truly,
Right.
feel like you're a veteran. It's more just experience of winters that you've missed forecasts on. So, it's been a good ride thus far, and
You've been here 4 years now?
4 years, yeah.
You just had an anniversary, right?
I did, yeah. November 15th, I celebrated 4 years full time.
Oh, wow. Just the other day.
Yeah.
All right. Meteorologist Dan Brown. I've been here for 17 years. I started in September 30th, 2002. Before that, I worked in Binghamton, New York for a year. Before that, I actually went to grad school at Mississippi State, broadcast meteorology. Before that, I actually worked in unrelated field to weather. I got my undergrad in environmental geography, but I always wanted to do the weather since I was a kid. But as a kid and growing up, like being on TV and doing the weather just seemed kind of out of my comfort zone. Out of my comfort zone. Out of my what?
Out of your realm?
Out of my realm. Yeah, exactly. So I actually got a job doing something unrelated to weather, and that's when I realized, I got to go back to school.
Gotta go back to weather.
I didn't know you went to graduate school.
Yeah, but you know what? It was one of those things where I had already got my degree, so I went back just because I already had the degree.
Right.
So instead of going back getting a second degree, but I went to Mississippi State, down in Mississippi for 2 years.
Boy,
And,
talk about...
Yeah, I went from Lynn, Mass. to Mississippi. I'd gone nowhere. I mean, I was in Lynn. I grew up in Lynn. I didn't think I lived anywhere else, and then I went right to Mississippi.
Was that a culture shock?
It was. It was
For
fun,
them,
though.
for them or you?
Both. They couldn't understand me when I talked. Like, literally couldn't understand me because of my accent.
It took me a minute.
Did you have the Boston accent?
Oh, it was terrible. It was not terrible.
I mean, I've only known you for about 7 years, and you haven't had it. So
A little
Are
bit.
you
right?
kidding?
Yeah, I know.
He has it.
Yeah,
he
certain
definitely
words.
has
Oh
it.
God, that is not a Boston accent.
It
every
comes
once in a
out in
while,
certain words.
Well, when
Yeah.
he gets aggravated, it comes out.
We're going to that point right about now.
No, so then that's it. Then I went to Mississippi State, and I scratched and clawed and finally got a job in Binghamton, New York, because I was terrible on air. Not terrible, but I wasn't good. I mean, being on air was very frightening to me.
You paid your dues.
Being scared, paid my dues, and then I got a job in Binghamton, and then arrived here in September 2002.
Yeah, right now, on the air, you're the longest running on the air.
Yeah, that's right.
You are.
Right, yeah.
I'm not just isn't that unbelievable? To me, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, scary, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, when you retire, that
That was it.
that made me.
You
I mean,
you automatically acceded to that crown.
Yeah.
Or ascended.
Now, Beth's been in the business long, but she left and then, of course, came back.
Yeah,
Beth
that's
Ward.
right.
Yeah.
All right, Don.
All right. Well, meteorologist Don Mahar. I've been here 7 years. Just had my 7th anniversary back in October. I was a sales rep for about 15 years in the automotive industry, but this was something I always wanted to do, so I decided it was time to make a career change. Also, Mississippi State, although I did not actually go down to Mississippi, I did the bulk of my education online. Started here in October 2012. Been here now 7 years, and second only in far as seniority, I think, to this guy over here.
So is there
right.
is there a big difference between meteorology and car sales?
Maybe just a little bit.
Smidge.
Maybe just a little bit.
Let me go see my manager.
I mean, at least I could say, being in car sales, I knew how to talk. So,
You do very
That's
well.
true.
so
Yeah, that's true.
But yes, I've been here 7 years now, and loving every minute of it.
Indeed. And the newbies, Janna.
Yeah, the newbie. 3 years in August I've been here. From Jersey. So I'm sort of,
In between.
I don't know. It's not New England, but it's close in some ways. But I went to college at Linden State, which is right up 91 in Vermont. Graduated from there and worked for 4 years for News 12 in New York, Long Island, Hudson Valley, and then went to West Virginia. So I feel you with the Southern thing.
Right.
For 6 years, where I was chief for 4, and then came here.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
A great team, indeed. All the years that I've been here, the strongest team I've ever seen, I must say. So
Thank you. Well, thank you.
Well, I will say, to all due respect with the folks that I worked with before, being here 17 years, this is definitely the funnest, easiest bunch to work with, the colleagues to work with.
Yeah.
So.
You guys are easy targets for viewers. How do you deal with that? I need you to lean into the microphone.
You actually want us to answer this question? Okay.
I just feel like, I don't know, it goes with the territory, take it with a grain of salt, you know, and
You know the best thing is you can retire and just tell people anything you want.
Are you loving that?
I don't care.
Do you do that?
I have. It depends on what they say. and how stupid it is, but no.
Usually most folks are fine. They're fun. You know what I mean? And usually if they're saying something to your, if they're negative to you, it's kind of tongue in cheek. Well, at least it seems that way in person.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, anybody who's ever said anything to me has always said it and then has laughed afterwards. So, I mean, I don't think I've ever really had anybody be downright rude. I think you see it more on social media than you actually see it somebody coming up to you.
That's a whole different element in this, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. It brings out the worst in people. I mean, we see a lot of good, but it does definitely bring out the worst in people. What I say to people is, hey, we're human too. Pick your favorite baseball player. Ted Williams hit 400. That's one of the best batting averages ever. That means 60% of the time he didn't get on base, he didn't hit a home run or anything like that. Yep. So we're batting 90% over the next couple of days. I say that's a pretty good batting average,
Mm-hmm.
And we'll miss him. We're also human. So
Well, when you guys are tracking storms, because I watched it night after night, you would be sitting at the computer and you would get all these models coming in. You have to go, okay, which one am I going to go with? Mm-hmm. I'd want to kill myself.
Well, I got to tell you, sometimes I think that it's almost like, to simplify, there's almost too much coming in now.
Yeah.
You see too many things and overanalyze too much. Sometimes that can happen.
Yeah.
Definitely. Plus, now with the social media aspect, we have people taking screenshots of models that are 2 weeks out, which is usually total crap, and posting it online, and people start freaking out. So then we have to go online and try to bring everybody back in.
And then when a storm's out there, if it's been mentioned a week out, it's like, now if you don't mention it on air, you're behind the time. You got to keep up with.
Well, the other thing, too, is you've got independent contractors out there who are posting on social media, who, weather nuts, weather experts, and that kind of, that's what they're billing themselves as.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's really no consequence for them.
No.
Right.
They're not going to lose their job if they're wrong. Not that necessarily we are either, but, if we're wrong and we're really wrong, then we have to face quite the storm. Mm-hmm. For the people who are just online, maybe not so much.
But we're also not people who are going to post a model run 2 weeks out and say, hey, look what's coming, coming 2 weeks down the road. Because even as good as the technology is and all the data that we have at our disposal, the atmosphere is still going to do what the atmosphere is going to do. And I mean, we've seen that with some of the storms just over the last couple of weeks. We've been thinking maybe we'd be talking about several inches of snowfall in some parts of the area, and it really just hasn't materialized.
Dan always likes to say we like to land an airplane as we glide into the day forecast instead of riding a roller coaster. And that's sometimes what the models do, is they'll bring a storm in, show us 12 inches of snow, and then 12 hours later, that same model run that was giving us a blockbuster snowstorm completely out to sea. Yeah. So we like to glide our forecast into that day that we're forecasting for, instead of doing the ups and downs.
So you have an idea, at nighttime when you guys are doing the weather, it's here. Then when I come in the morning, it's not totally different. I mean, unless it's happening now, but a week out, you have an idea how things are going.
Yeah.
If the forecasting is done the right way, which we do, I think.
We're going to get into the winter forecast, but for all four of you, what's been the toughest storm you've had to predict or have had to deal with? Janna, let's start with you then. Here.
March. Not last year, but the one before. Yeah. The nor'easter March. It was back to back to back to back. We had 4, right? First.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It was, oh my God. I never wanted to drink so much in my life, but it was 4 right in a row. They were all different. And I want to say by the third one, it didn't really bring us much of anything, but it was such a big deal at that point that it was just pulling hair, trying to figure out if it was going to be rain or snow or miss us or ice, and it was rough. Mm-hmm. That was probably the worst.
Yeah, I got to agree with Janna. That was probably the worst string of storms as far as trying to forecast that certainly I've ever seen. But winter storms, tend to be, I don't want to say they're a little bit easier to forecast, but you tend to have a little bit more warning as opposed to, and I know Dan would probably agree with me here, severe weather season. That can certainly be even tougher as far as forecasting is concerned.
I mean, I think for me, forecasting winter weather is, and I'm sure for all of us, right? It's fun, whereas I feel as though severe thunderstorms they're more stressful, whereas a snowstorm is almost
we're all in this together sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's fun, and it's and you're tracking it from days out, whereas severe weather, it's just a ball of stress.
Well, how many times have we talked about severe weather outbreaks over the last couple of years that just have not materialized?
Can you remember a specific one that was really hard?
In terms of storms, or
the day of the tornado in Coleraine?
Conway?
Conway.
The February tornado?
That was in February, too.
Yeah.
That was a...
We've had some bizarre weather here for the last few years.
Oh, yeah.
We have.
I mean, I know on a personal level, the most stressful storm when I wasn't working was the 2011 snowstorm.
In October.
When all the trees came down. Not so much from a forecasting aspect, from a personal aspect. A microburst went through my house in June, the tree came down on my house, and then here we are, and I just got it cleaned up, and here we are in October, and now I'm lying there at night in bed, and you can hear just trees snapping everywhere. And it's like, what's gonna give next?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the tornado that came through in 2011, I was on the air for that too. So, I mean, that was. It happened so quickly, though. I don't remember that being so much stressful. It was just, or difficult to predict. We knew it was an event that we were under tornado watch actually that day. Obviously, we didn't think we were going to get what we got.
No.
But that just happened so quickly. But that was obviously one of the most memorable.
Yeah, Jacob.
I would say for me, the most memorable storms are tracking tornadoes or tornado warnings. And the only reason for that is you kind of get into that moment and you just go. Yeah. And I've been fortunate many times to have Janna right by my side, and we kind of ping pong off each other. I'll take a break, a sip of water, and then she'll take over for a little bit. So it's nice that we've had that backup there. But you know, when you have severe weather like that and you're tracking these storms, those in particular, you know that you're only moments away potentially from people being really impacted. Sure. And so that's where that additional layer of stress is.
Yeah. Let me ask you this about that too. And I think I've asked you all this over the course of it. In my career, I think I was in television for 2 weeks. We had the tornado in 1979 in Windsor Locks. Next was 1995 in Great Barrington, then 2011 here, and that seemed to be the pattern. But from a viewer standpoint, there seemed to be, and there was the longest time where you didn't hear a lot about tornadoes. And then after the June tornado here, it was like all of a sudden there just seems to be more and more of a threat of tornadoes. Why is that?
So a couple reasons, and this kind of delves into what I'm doing for our weather special. But the memory our memories in our brains are cool things. They're very interesting how memories work. And there's something called the recency bias. So something that has never happened to you before, and for the first time that happens to you, that first time sticks out, and then future instances then stick out to you even more so. Yeah. So the June 1st tornado, a lot of people in this area, first time that they were impacted, now that word, just saying tornado, triggers that memory, that physiological emotion that they had that day. So certainly memories of that time. And then secondly, I think that we're just getting better at tracking storms, that we're seeing into them a lot more. We're able to, it's not just the big tornadoes that we see, we're able to see some of the smallest tornadoes with the newest radar technology that we have. Okay. So the detection is getting better.
Yeah.
Well, plus I would say just on top of that, right, so they can put out a tornado warning quicker. Like, we got to put out a warning for this where it might not have happened before, whether it actually becomes a tornado or not. But also with Facebook and social media, we can see we're a lot more aware of maybe a group of people that live in somewhere in Franklin County in a small town where the National Weather Service said we wouldn't be aware of it, and now we're hearing all these reports, and the National Weather Service sends out a team to check it out. So there's more.
And that's exactly what happened in Conway's instance, because they initially thought it was just a downburst or a big storm that rolled through, and then they finally went and did a survey, and they're like, oh my gosh, this was actually a decent tornado, an EF1, 4 miles on the ground, went right through downtown. So,
whereas 10 years ago, maybe we're not talking about that right now.
Yeah. You were on the air that night, weren't you, for that one?
For the Conway one, yes. Yeah, I was. And it was.
I don't think they put a warning.
They did not. They
were thunderstorm.
They put a severe thunderstorm warning, but you looked at the velocity scans, and you could clearly see the storm was rotating. And there's been a couple of instances in my time here where I've seen what looks like rotation on the radar, and it's just been a severe thunderstorm warning. I can remember one afternoon I was working here, we had some thunderstorms come through. Somebody sent in a picture of what looked like a funnel cloud. And when I went back and looked at the radar scan, storm was rotating, and it was a funnel cloud. So, I mean, we talk about a lot of the negatives as far as social media is concerned, but I mean, social media can also be a great tool and a great resource for us because, like Dan mentioned, you get these smaller hill towns where maybe the radar coverage may not be so great, but people up there are seeing something with the storm. They're sending pictures into us, and it certainly helps us do our jobs, which is great.
Janna, because I think the other part too is the social media aspect of it. You're also forecasting. It's almost like a personal forecast every night that you do.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, whenever people ask me like, well, it seems like we're getting more of this or more of that, like what you said with the tornado. It's like once that happens these days, you hear about it for weeks and months. Yeah. We talk about it over and over and over. It's on social media all the time. So I think you're just getting bombarded with the information more than you were, say, back in the 50s when, that wasn't an option.
You only had one newscast at 5 o'clock in the evening.
And it seems like I sometimes feel like I might have more people watching my forecast intently on Facebook Live than on the news channel.
And they can ask you questions.
Yeah, they like that.
Yeah. They do.
And the first thing you asked about people getting snippy, I'm like the disciplinarian of the group. I'm the only one who will fight back. I mean, sometimes there's tone in your responses. Jacob's usually, he's the cream puff of the group. He'll be the most polite, which is probably the best way to be. For me, someone starts getting snippy and I'll snip right back, which is not always the best.
Well, I think that's the way to do it. It's like dealing with children.
Exactly.
Well, I've always said
it's my Facebook Live
jokingly that Janna and I have the same last name. Janna reminds me of my older sister, even though I'm 10 years older than her.
Yeah. So, how long have you guys been married?
I get that often. Yeah.
Nope.
Are they related?
Yeah.
Are they married?
Do we look related?
All right. Well, we build this as winter, so let's spend the last 10 minutes. We can talk forever. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the biggest winter storm we had last winter came in November. The biggest storm we had, or pretty close to it.
We did get a 7-inch storm in November. I don't know if that was the biggest, though, was it?
Yeah.
I think it might have been.
Could have been. Yeah, because we had a lot of little
and dimes.
Right.
Yeah.
I
think you're right.
Annoyance snow.
Annoyance snow.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at this winter? What are your projections? And again, this is we qualify that. These are the projections.
Have you ever seen that? It's like the NFL morning show. And they do the ridiculous predictions for entertainment purpose?
Yeah.
That's sort of what this is. Okay. So I'm doing the winter forecast. So I did a lot of the research. And basically when you start doing a winter forecast, it's like homework. I study. I read what everybody's writing because I'm not a climatologist. I forecast weather a few days out. I do not focus on long-term climate trend. And that's definitely a different science. And so while a lot of people ask us, it's not really what we do. So I have to read. A lot of it's still theory. So we talk about El Nino and La Nina, which this year we're kind of in between the two. It's a neutral phase. That can mean anything for us. We can have high snow, low snow, and a lot of times that stuff doesn't necessarily say, well, we're going to get this kind of winter. We'd like it to, but it's just not the case. So we need to look at lots of different things, and there are these big circulations across the globe, these big connections that we try to look at to see if anything points to a certain type of winter, colder, snowier. I'm going to go with, we'll have a lot of ups and downs, as always. We will see near average snowfall, maybe slightly below. We will have a slightly above normal temperature for the winter, but that's over the span of 3 months. So day to day, that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
So we're still going to get those cold spells.
Definitely.
We're still going to get the snow.
When we get the cold spell, it'll be in early to mid-January.
That's the coldest, you think?
I believe so. We'll have the polar vortex thing happening mid-December, so we should start feeling the cold early to mid-January.
But we're going to start to feel some cold around here this time of year. I mean, the month of November, we've set 4 record lows?
3 record lows.
3 record lows.
And
highs.
Yep.
Cold highs.
Cold highs.
And based out of the station at Amherst, this is the second coldest start to November in their record. Their records go back to 1893. So we're talking about some pretty historic cold to start the month. We'll probably moderate a little bit as we get towards the end of the month. But, on that note, I kind of did a little graph of comparing November temperatures to seasonal snowfall. And as you probably would expect, when you have a cold November, you do have, generally speaking, average or above average snowfall. But there are definitely notable exceptions that the 90s, for example, 98, 99, 2000, we had below average temperatures and we had below average snowfall. Sure. So it's not as Janna was saying, like one equals this is going to happen too.
In fact, last year, I'm not sure what it ended up being, but last year, I was just looking at the data today, November was pretty cold last year.
It was.
Yeah, it was.
Right? And we, again, winter wasn't crazy, and it was
below
bad.
normal
Below
snowfall
average,
and slightly above normal temperatures.
Yeah.
And usually it's as November goes, the winter goes.
Yep.
But not
Thanksgiving last year was 19 degrees on November 22nd for a high.
Yuck.
It just seemed, you talk about cold snaps and stuff like that. Growing up around here, it seemed to be we would have extended cold snaps, like 7-10 days. There don't seem to be that many of those anymore. A couple of days here, a couple of days there, it gets a little bit milder.
And so
We
that
had a
actually,
fierce one.
Yeah.
early January.
Yeah.
Not last year, but the year before.
Year before.
Yeah.
Like from
To start off
Christmas
the
It
year.
was like
Start on
2 weeks
Yeah.
of, oh God, that was terrible.
so that is some current climate research that our cold spells aren't as long as the past. In the 60s, when snow would fall in November, it would last through February and March, and we're just not seeing that now, where we'll get that melt. We'll get the snow in November, but then it'll melt, and then we'll get the snow in December, and then it will melt. So when you have these memories of walking through a bunch of snow in the 60s, well, that was the case because it was just staying cold during the 60s.
Those days when we had to walk to school 5 miles, I mean.
Uphill
Uphill
both ways.
Uphill both ways.
Oh, my God, after I delivered newspapers. Bad chance on that one. Doesn't it seem, too, that over the last few years that some of the biggest storms that we have come in March?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and those are nasty because usually it's heavy snow.
Yeah.
March and October,
Yeah.
these are big-time transition months between the main seasons, which is summer and winter. So as we transition, both jet streams start coming into play. We have a northern jet and a southern jet. Southern jet we usually deal with in the summer, northern jet in the winter. In those transition months, especially November and March, we see those two jets come into play more often. And when they phase together, that provides some serious energy to some of these giant coastal storms. And if we're going to get nor'easters, it's usually late fall, early spring.
Yep.
So, right, and there's warm air involved with those systems, right? But if you're on the cold side of that system and you're cold enough for snow, you can get a ton of moisture.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
And that's what happened in 2015 is we were just on the cold side every single storm, every single nor'easter. And we ended up getting, 65 inches that year?
Right.
Like Boston
Yeah.
got 107
Right.
inches.
Oh, yeah, they got pounded.
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Now, with us, too, in the valley, in the Pioneer Valley that we all live in here, what effect does that have on our weather? Is there any impact, or is it just...
Definitely.
Definitely.
Yep.
So you get the rain shadow effect, basically, where the Berkshires tend to dry out some of the air masses. So as they're coming down the Berkshires, the air mass starts to dry out a little bit as it approaches the valley. So they'll get a lot of the precip versus us getting the precip.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that we have to take into account when it comes to forecasting. And you'll see that in our snow maps. The Berkshires tend to get more snow unless it's a coastal system that is really, the gradient is a lot more to the east and they actually don't get any. That would be the really only case that we would see.
Right. And a lot of times, too, like if Boston's getting a heavy rainstorm and it looks like the atmosphere is going to be too, it's just high in the sky, you get up to a few thousand feet, it's plenty warm enough for rain, but the cold air will get trapped in the valley,
Yeah.
and we end up getting ice or
Yeah.
freezing rain or sleet.
That's the worst, huh?
And we're sitting there at 32 all day, and we have warm air way up in the sky, and it's 50 in Boston, and we're getting a nasty, cold, icy day.
Yeah.
And it's much less fascinating, but one of the hardest things to predict sometimes is the overnight temperature in the valley on a clear night. Clear, calm night. Figuring out how cold the valley is going to get, because it will be colder than the hills usually. And with something called radiational cooling, Dan's pretty good at it.
He's really good at it.
not at it at all. It's hard.
Just go low.
Drop it another 5
Even last night, we dipped to 26 or 27 right as the sky cleared out.
Well, that looks good. What's your favorite? My favorite weather term is bombogenesis. When the first person I ever heard say that was Tom Bavacqua.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I
you're
thought,
right. Not new, but
it's
mainstream.
Bavacqua. I didn't think it was real.
Yeah.
But bombogenesis, I mean, to me,
A lot of people love
Right,
that one.
Tom used that years ago.
That's a good one.
Well, that seems to be the
buzzword.
the buzzword right now is
Bomb
bomb cyclone. Yes.
Yeah, bomb cyclone,
It was
bombogenesis.
polar
A couple of years
vortex.
ago it was polar vortex.
Derecho was one year.
Yep.
Oh,
I mean, all these words have existed.
Snowtober.
Yeah.
I must equate those words to, like, if you put it into sports terms, it's like polar vortex in bombogenesis is equivalent to, like, the Blitz or a Hail Mary, right? Those words have always been around, but now somebody that's all of a sudden paying attention, oh, the Hail Mary. Like, that's a new word. That's something new. No, it's not new. That's been around forever.
It just doesn't happen necessarily.
Right. Or you don't use it, or you don't,
I like crepuscular rays.
Corpuscular rays.
Yeah.
What's that one?
Ooh.
What is that?
That is when the sun's rays, the beams, come
yeah.
shooting down out of a cloud. So, like, the cloud is sort of blocking the sun's rays, and you get little pieces of them. It's very angelic.
God. Don, do you have one?
Do I have a favorite?
Corpuscular rays.
I can't top that. I mean, I can't top that.
It's. I think what we should do is in April we'll sit down and we'll go, okay, so how did it turn out?
Yeah.
Jacob's beard will be fully grayed out.
His scalp will be too. Is that possible?
We'll blame it on Janna.
Oh, all right, yeah.
That's right. She put together the winter forecast. So.
Yep.
Hey, guys, you know who you blame it on now?
Who?
Me.
Oh,
There
right.
you go.
right.
Yeah.
That's true.
You put us on.
Well, here's the thing, though. If I get it right, I should get something.
Yeah.
I think you
Prize
should.
of some sort.
Wednesday win.
Pat on the back.
Dunkin' Donuts gift card, baby.
Thank you all. It's oh God, this is fun. It's just different.
This is
You know?
Yeah.
Because we have the nice thing is when there's stuff going on, and when I was anchoring, it was like I would kind of ask you questions and do this and that, but to be able to sit down with the four of you, it's been really good. It's good to see you guys.
Definitely.
Well, thank
you.
you, Dave. Yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this insight into forecasting the weather. Now, as I said at the beginning of this podcast, I'm looking for your opinions on the podcast itself and any suggestions you might have for who you'd like to see as a guest. Send them to me at dave.madsen, that's Madsen, at westernmassnews.com. Next week, our guest will be Springfield Mayor Dominic Sarno, recently elected to his 5th term, making him the longest-serving mayor in Springfield history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Even Better Western Mass.